gonna shoot through a couple of topics real quick. I guess this one is kind of like an advertisement type deal. Plus, want to revisit it. I don't think this is going to be the most informative of video as far as just straight information wise, but again, like I said, a little bit of an advertisement here. It's been a while since I've done a K28-3 with the rotating assembly of a Type S. Actually, I've only ever done it once before. The other times I've usually just piston swapped. All right, well, I was throwing it out there and letting you guys know a couple weeks back, or maybe a month at this point in time, know that Type S cranks are available on the Reman. And yeah, so the initial person who bought it, like I didn't charge him an uptick on cost, because even though the crank is a whole lot more expensive than what I'm used to getting it at, but generally speaking, it still fell within my cost of what I would charge for the core. So I didn't increase the price on him. Plus, I kind of wanted to get this particular build through before I got to doing another one. So I will adjust the price, but I don't think it's going to adjust by much. Maybe around a $100 increase or whatnot. I gotta review that. But yeah, so somebody asked a question about like what head would I put on that block. Well, first off, that block is not for me. That is for a customer. I have multiple ideas of a block that I want to do for me. I'm trying to hold off on all of them because, again, I'm stuck in a place where I can't really work on cars. So yeah, the biggest fucking problem I have with this place, and it was the first thing that came to my mind when we pulled up in the drive-through or the driveway, which is that the house is on an incline. The entire yard is an incline. There is no place that is flat for me to lift a car up. You gotta have to kind of jack a car up if you want to put a new engine in there or whatnot, or do anything to it. So that is my issue. On a good note, I feel pretty confident saying, extremely confident in saying, we're gonna finish out this year and we're gonna be moving next year. Money is a non-issue at this point. So the real question is, when we go to move, I guess the real question is, in the next 6 months, when we have to start focusing on this, is if we're gonna move and rent again, or if we're gonna try and buy a house. Yeah. When the time comes to move, I will have space to work on a car. This is a non-negotiable issue. When we go to the new place, I have to have a place to work on a car. Once I do that, then we'll be back on the table to test some new things. Now, the block that I'm leaning towards that I would like to do first, the engine I would like to put out first, is going to be a Turbo K. It's going to most likely be a Turbo K28-3, with Type S guts. And the head I'm going to use is going to be a CRV/Accord head, a base model. Primary factor being that I make the money I make off of K-Series heads is usually the VTEC heads, the real VTEC. So there's no real point in me, holding on to one of those. That's lost revenue. So I have multiple base model heads, and they don't really sell very often. So me keeping a base model head is great for me. I have a head right now that I just need to reassemble. It's clean. The valve seals are installed. I just need to put the springs. I just need to put the spring assembly and the valves together. Right? It'll be head. That head will be for sale. It is again, it's a K24 base model head, and the whole idea is it's upgraded with stock valve springs off of the VTEC head. Now, what happens is with these VTEC heads is I upgrade them with springs and retainers. The old springs and retainers, the stock ones, I can use those to upgrade the base model heads, because the base model head springs and retainers are only about like half the size that the VTEC springs are. That being a factor in your rev range, right? The base model only, I think, red lines at 7.5 or something like that, and its revs at 7.2. So that's, that'll give me the little bit of a safety measure. Like, I wouldn't care about revving a base model up to 8,000, but if you want longevity, especially if you're making big power, upgrading the springs, is a very cheap upgrade for me, because I've already got the cost covered in the head when I bought it, right? So now the good thing is I have 3 sets of stock VTEC springs. One is a partially dual valve spring, where it's a single spring on the intake and dual valve springs on the exhaust. Those are the ones I'm going to put on the other head on that base model head I have, and I'll offer it for sale. Now, if somebody doesn't buy it, I'm going to use that head for my turbo block. Now, again, boost being the great equalizer, I don't care if the VTEC heads flow better than the base model heads. I'm going to be shoving all kinds of extra air in there, it's still going to make the power anyway. Also, I'm planning on making enough power that VTEC crossover, I plan on making enough power that I'm going to need at least E85 to power this thing. For me, if you're a long-time watcher, E85 I consider a race fuel. So, it's not something I'm going to daily drive. The fact that it's not something I'm going to daily drive, it's guaranteed to be VTEC killer. So now that I'm using a base model head and have to use VTEC killer, it doesn't really matter because that's what, it's not going to be daily driven anyway. So all kind of incentive for me to use the base model head. Now here's the advertisement part. All kinds of incentive for you to use the base model head. You can very easily make 600 horsepower on even a stock block, right? On the stock K24 or stock K20. Now let's say you're buying, even if you're buying your own, you go out there and you buy your own stock short block and you need a head. You don't want to pay $500-$600 for a VTEC head. Well, you could pay me $400 to get a upgraded spring base model head that's cleaned, brand new seals, upgraded valve springs, $400. Now, this is a limited time option thing because, like I said, I only have 3 sets of springs, and one of those springs, whichever one they are, is going to be for me. So right now I can only have 2 available. Now heads I have plenty of. So there's also another thing is if I don't have those, and you can still upgrade to titanium springs, retainers, all that. You can still get a SuperTech upgrade for that, and I plan on doing that later on down the line. Right now I'm just kind of testing the waters with the stock springs, seeing how that goes, and later on eventually get another set of springs. And then the whole idea is to have a much better price tag for that. Now it's still going to be expensive, but it's not as expensive as the VTEC head. So like a built VTEC head for me right now is around the $1,200 range, and it may get tweaked a little bit. But right now it's at $1,200. If you buy the base model head though, with springs and retainers, you still get that high liftability with the springs and retainers from the SuperTech, but now the head's only $800. So you save quite a bit of money if you go that route, but it's still a viable head, especially if you're going to do forced induction. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you want to go this route if you're going to do NA and you want to make the most power. Now, you can still use this for NA. That's fine. But, with the VTEC killer or whatnot, you'll still make decent power. But if you want to make, the most off of if you use one of these heads, I would suggest if you're going to go the turbo route. Now, again, a lot of people buy K-Series blocks for me. So if you want to buy a block and head, but you don't want to break the bank for the head, then buying the base model head is an option. Now, the main reason why I'm going with the CR or the K24 base model head is because the K24, the way it is set up with the coolant passages and whatnot, it'll accept a RBC intake manifold without the need to cut. Now, I got no problem with using the max speeding rod manifolds. So that manifold's like $138 or whatnot, and I have one cut, just waiting to be ported and rewelded. Busy though. And again, that's another thing I wanted to add to my inventory. I wanted to be able to add those max speeding rod manifolds, but ported. But again, the schedule is really tight, so I haven't had time to even go back and finish that. Eventually I will though. But anyway, that's my option. The reason why I'm going to go with this is because it'll take the RBC manifold without any need to cut or anything off of it. So you just literally put it on. Now, if you want to use the PRB manifold, then of course go with the PNC head or whatnot, or the PND off of the K20 base model. Also, the added advantage there, which I've talked about again ad nauseum, is that the base model K20 head nets more compression than the K24 base model head because of the extra meat that you have inside the chamber. All right, so you want to look for a spike in compression or whatnot, and that's the way to go. Now the difference being is that's an extra $50, but an extra $50 for a 0.5 jump in compression is, I think, more than fair, considering the fact that $170 valves for flat phase valves don't even give you that. I think it's 0.3 to 0.5 versus, you're getting it for sure 0.5 with that head. So yeah, again, it's a good measure, a good way to go if you want to go base model. Is an option still. I would recommend it for forced induction though, unless you're deliberately buying. If you want to buy an engine completely from scratch and you're going to VTEC killer it up because you want to keep it on budget, then there's nothing wrong with using that head. You just, got to know what it's for. Now, if you're curious as to what a stock refreshed base model head goes for, I think it's like $200 or $250. I have to recalculate that because of the fact that I have to consider the fact that I'm going to be cleaning the head now. So maybe like 260. I think I could probably do 260. That is the K24 base model head, right? 260 for the K24 base model head. That will be cleaned by the machine shop, new SuperTech valve seals, stock valve train. You know, and then of course you can upgrade that to VTech Killer rocker arms or whatnot. I could do that. There's multiple versions of the VTech Killer. You can get the pin locked intake with modified exhaust, or you can get double exhaust. You can get them cut, non-cut. This, you know, it's a big, you know, a whole bunch of different mixes on prices or whatnot. So if you're interested in doing a base model, or if you're interested in getting a complete VTech Killer head, I can't say right now that I can guarantee complete cams VTech Killer head, because cams have not been on the market recently. For the last couple of cam sets I've had, I had to buy an entire head, and I'm not really opposed to doing that. But even recently, I haven't seen heads listed, and I like to try and jump on things when somebody else posts them, because you come at it with a better negotiation angle versus me openly searching. Because if I'm openly searching, then I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position for negotiation, because it's like, hey, I want this, but I want it at my price, and then it's gonna, you know, people are gonna be more willing to hold off because they think that I need it or whatnot. So anyway, there's that. Now, again, with the advertisement part, the big advertisements, all that shit was advertisement, I guess, but it's not what I meant. I am in the works of working out a plan for 4-piston racing heads. Now, it's going to be extremely expensive for you guys. I say extremely expensive, you know, because for me, if I'm looking at it from empty pockets, I'd say it's extremely expensive. Because a 4-piston racing head, you want to make the most of it. So if you're going to get a giant ported 4-piston beautiful head, you're going to want springs and retainers, because you want to, again, make the most of your port work. Now, you don't have to, but it would, you know, I would assume that you'd want to. So the 156 version 2 head, the head that makes 300 horsepower on a stock block, is $1,250, and then they charge $50 for cleaning, and as opposed to $60 for cleaning locally. So I would automatically add that cleaning to the labor and whatnot. That'll be $1,300. Plus, you got to ship the head out and ship the head back. So, 14 and change just for the 4-piston work. And then, of course, there's the cost of the head itself, and then the cost that I'm going to charge you for parts and reassembly. Now, the thing is, you can get the head for me, similar to the CSS situation. You can just get a 4-piston head for me. The whole idea would be to have these things on inventory, so that way if you want to buy just a ready-to-go head, you just order it, and I can send it to you right away, or you can send me a core, so that way you don't have to wait you don't have to go and send out a head to the 4-piston, wait for them to get it done and send it back to you. That's the whole idea of, you know, you're paying for something that I have on hand. Same thing with the CSS blocks. I have one CSS block on hand, the B18. There's a K20 and a K24 currently at CSS that I imagine that will be probably on their way back next week. And then I'm getting ready to send a B20 out to CSS for a build, and then probably going to send a K24 with it as well. So the whole, you know, I'm going back and forth with the boss lady the other day. She's like, hey, you know, we recommend this and that. I'm like, yeah, I know what you guys recommend. I was like, but these aren't something I'm going to build, and I'm keeping their CSS cores. I want to keep the cost as low as possible, you know, have them on hand. And again, I'm also accepting core discounts for those too, but it's not going to be huge. They're just going to be a couple $100. But again, you know, if you can go out and find a block for $50 and send it to me for $60, and I give you $200 discount, I think it's still worthwhile for you to do that. Plus, it also saves me on the hassle of going out and having to find another block. So that's why I don't mind core fees at all. And that also goes for any heads that I have. If you guys want to send me a core, that's fine. Although I think I'll skip on the core for the base model heads, just because, like, I mean, it's whatever. I guess if you have one, you want to offer it to me, I'll give you a ballpark number, or I'll give you a number for it, but not in a rush to get any more of those. I have a lot. All right, guys. So yeah, I think that ran a lot longer than I thought it was gonna, and just wanted to say that, yeah, 4-piston heads is something like I probably won't 100% commit to that super soon, but I think in the next year. I said last year, the end of last year, I preached CSS blocks were in inventory. I did that. There are some other things I'm going to do to fill out my inventory. I'm just waiting a couple of months to see where the money's at, you know, to see where you guys are spending money, to see if I make sure I'm not investing in the wrong thing. And then next year, I'll get my shit situated with moving, and then at that point, I will see if I can start investing in a head, even if it's just one or two, because if I can get one done, make profit off of one, that will be enough to split into two, and then so on and so forth. Same thing with the CSS blocks. If I can sell just one, I can turn one easily into two. And the same thing like with again a sleeve block, I can turn one of those into two, or I can sell a CSS block and use that to buy to invest in a 4-piston head. And so again, a 4-piston, the way that there's only, of course, there's a couple different versions of the K-series porting they do, but only one of them is like specific for that casting of the head because of the way it is made, and that's the TSX head. So the TSX head has its own design that they do, but the 156 version 2, it's just K-series. So that 156 version 2, I'm pretty sure works for the base model head as well as the real VTEC head. And at that point, when you're porting to that kind of level, it doesn't really matter anymore whether you got a base model head or the real VTEC head. The only difference being is one, you're going to have a VTEC crossover versus the other. But my thought and understanding is that if you're getting a 4-piston head, you're not necessarily using pump gas. Although I will say that they did use pump gas to make 300 horsepower with the kind of compression that you would get from the RRC pistons. So if you wanted to do like PRC pistons in a K24 and the 4-piston head, that's 300 horsepower or 300 plus guaranteed. And even if you use stock pistons on a stock block, you're still within that 300 horsepower range from what they've claimed. Of course, you're going to need cams and whatnot, but still from that head, from that port work. So that's the plug. Again, this video ran a lot longer than I expected it to. Social media links are in the description down below, guys. And peace. Thanks for watching.